Hi, my name is Frank Straza with the Heritage School of Woodworking, and in this video I'm going to go over proper sawing technique and some different exercises that I have my students do to prepare for hand cutting dovetails. Sawing is one of those things that is probably one of the harder skills to learn in woodworking, and once you learn how to saw accurately, it will really affect the quality of your joints. Now, there's different saws that you can use for cutting dovetails. There's a straight handle one like this one. This is a dovetail saw that I picked up on eBay. I got this one for $9.99 and I was the only bidder. I did sharpen it though. It didn't come sharp, so you got to watch our sharpening videos if you do pick up your saw for $9.99. This is a Lie-Nielsen one, which is a pistol grip handle, which is a little different, and some may prefer this one as opposed to a straight handle. I've used the straight handle one for, I don't know, 20 plus years in cutting dovetails, and I like it. I'm comfortable with it. But if I was to recommend a saw for cutting dovetails, I would highly recommend this saw. It comes sharp, it's ready to go out of the box. It's Lie-Nielsen's dovetail saw. It's a very, very nice saw. Well, let's talk about technique, proper hold of the saw, how to position your body. For this exercise, I've just chosen a piece of pine here, and we'll stick it in our face vise. And I'm not even going to draw any lines right now. I just want to focus on proper technique, how to hold the saw. So let's start with this straight-handled saw. So what I'm going to do is position the saw in the palm of my hand like this. Gently wrap my fingers around like this with my first finger pointed to the side. My thumb is on the top. And I'm going to position my body with my front left foot forward. I'm right-handed, so I've got my left foot forward and my right foot back. The advantage to this is that I can bend at my knees. A lot of people complain when they're sawing that they are hunched over the bench. Well, a lot of that is technique. If you're standing with two legs like this, you only have one choice but to bend at the back, and that can be uncomfortable. Proper stance can save your back. So position your right foot back, left foot forward, or reversed if you're left-handed. Bend at the knees like this. Position yourself back far enough so that you can see what you're doing, and it also extends your hand, your arm in the right position. You'll notice that my arm is in line with the saw. What I don't want is I don't want pressure going straight down on top of the saw, which is easy to do if you're in the wrong standing position. So if I'm standing over like this and I'm holding the saw like this, automatically it puts pressure going straight down as opposed to back here like this. Now it positions the thrust in a linear motion, which is what we want. We want this linear back and forth motion. We don't want downward pressure. We want a linear stroke. So first finger like this, in the palm, because I want to be able to push it like this. First finger like that. I'm going to position my thumb here against the saw blade. What happens here is I'm positioning my first finger is pointing forward like this, but it's also putting pressure to the side of the saw. It's putting pressure this way, but then I have to counteract that pressure with my thumb. So here comes a thumb counteracting the pressure, and now I have a rigid, hard line that I can saw accurately to. Okay, so I put my thumb not here on the top, but here on the edge on my workpiece. I position my first finger pushing the saw up against my thumb, and lightly, you can see I can even start like this at an angle and then lower the saw into it, just like this. Now, one thing that I often tell my students is you want to use the whole saw and then some. Okay? Because what I find is a lot of people will tend to use this much of the saw. Okay? And I threaten to just cut the saw off like that and we'll have a little tiny short saw. The problem with that though is if you do that, it tends to not give you a rhythmic stroke. You'll tend to have a choppy kind of stroke and you'll be fighting the saw. By using the whole saw, you get more of a rhythm to it, and thus you'll have a more smooth cut. So you'll notice here, what I'm doing here is I'm just pushing the saw with my palm. Look at that. See, just pushing the saw with my palm, dragging it back like that. What I find a lot of people do is they'll try to start the cut and then it's not working, so they'll put more pressure on the top like this. And therefore, this thing isn't cutting at all, so we got to apply more pressure, and then it cuts in like that. I don't want to do that. I have no control that way. It's not effective, one bit. I can't follow a line that way. It doesn't work. What you have to do, if the saw is not cutting, is lighten up. Actually, you can even use your middle finger to lift the saw up out of the cut and light pressure. I often refer to this as the teeth kind of dancing across the top of the surface as opposed to digging into the surface. I want to show you the hold for using the pistol grip style handle here. Basically, you want to put your hand in there, which it fits very comfortably in this handle. Very nicely made handle. It does cost a little bit more than $9.99, but it's well worth it. What I'm doing here is the same thing. I'm positioning this finger out here. That points the saw in a straight direction, but it also puts pressure to the side like this against my thumb, like this. Again, the same exact technique. Lift up the saw. If the saw is not cutting, I'm going to lift up on the saw, and then work it straight down like this. One little technique that I like to use for sawing is to make a series of cuts, just straight cuts. So let's show you. We're going to make a cut here like this. Then I'm going to come back and try to make as fine a cut as I can that runs parallel to that cut without cutting through. So you can see we have a little tiny cut there. And we'll make another one. So what this is controlling, or what this is teaching, is control of the saw. So I'm trying to get it both square on the top and parallel straight down like this. Now granted, you won't be able to do this your first time sawing. What you'll want to do is you'll want to start a cut here. Again, light pressure. Then move over a little bit and see if you can follow that line and make a nice parallel cut. If you can master the technique to cut these little curves, chances are your dovetails will turn out tight. Those are different techniques. One thing I want to talk about again here with using the saw is these are Western style saws. Western style saws cut on the push stroke. The advantage here is that all my fuzz, if you will, the little fuzz that comes from cutting is on the outside. It's on this part here, so it's not fuzzing up my line. The Asian style saws, Japanese saws and such, actually cut on the pull stroke. And a lot of people like to use those saws a lot of times because they're sharp and ready to go out of the box. Although they're difficult to resharpen. The technique, though, is essentially the same in that you want a linear stroke. If I took this saw, the Western saw, and I turned it around like this, it cuts very easily. Why is that? Well, it's because I'm simply dragging the saw through the wood just as I would if this was a Japanese style saw. Okay? You see how easy it cuts? But it can cut that easy going this way if we apply the same technique of a linear motion. Okay? You see? A linear motion like that, it cuts just fine. One thing that I like to do for an exercise for hand cutting dovetails is to draw some lines on here to prepare ourselves for following a line. Okay, so we're going to start by marking rather square across the top. Now this, surprisingly, is the most important cut for cutting a dovetail, following the line and getting it perfectly square across the top. I'm going to go ahead and make some lines on the face that I'm looking at here, carrying those lines straight down. Okay, so now I have a line square across the top and then straight down on my side. Okay, and I always want to stay to one side of the line. So I'm going to start here and just come in like this, and again, very lightly here, follow the line. Now, one thing that I'm doing that you may not be able to pick up here is I'm making a subtle change with my wrist. So as I'm following down, I'll be putting pressure with my wrist to one side or the other side like this as I go down to make sure that I follow the line perfectly. Now, if I was putting a lot of pressure going down, I wouldn't be able to make those kind of subtle changes with my wrist as I followed down. So again, following just to one side here, light pressure, lift up on the saw, let the saw do the work. Now we're going to just follow it down, leaving the line. Here I'm making a slight rotation with my wrist, working down like that. So this is a good exercise to start off with. The next exercise that's actually works quite well is where we'll use our dovetail template marker. So I've got a dovetail template marker, which you'll see I'll use when we hand cut our dovetails, and it's one that I made. We'll have a video on making this little tool here. Simple tool, but it's got a 1-in-7 angle. The advantage with this tool is that I can mark both the top and the angle simultaneously. So all I'm doing here is I'm just making some marks for you to practice following that line. And then we'll come back and we'll mark this side. So now I can just follow that angle. This is really good warm-up practice. Okay, just try to follow that line. What I've found is that a lot of people will be able to follow the angle going in one direction, but then when they come back this way, it's a little bit harder. So you just have to compensate. If you tend to be going in with a steeper angle, if I tend to be going too steep in one direction, then just steer the saw back. Again, that's the advantage of going slow at it. Just light pressure, steer the saw. I've often seen people make a mark on both sides, and I don't recommend that because I'm only looking at one side when I'm sawing. So as long as your saw is following straight here, then there's really no need to have a mark on the other side. Very important, again, that you are square across the top. So you'll notice I'll even start the saw square this way. I'll even check it sometimes with a square. Put the square up against it. Don't run it back and forth, just check it. And then I'll angle the saw back like this and continue the cut. If you can master your saw, chances are your dovetails, your tenons, and such will turn out almost perfect. So go to the practice board, make yourself some practice cuts, and master your saw.